Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm very excited for this week's episode.
Same, because it's just a beautiful mosh posh of things. So, basically, just to explain, we will be talking about vampire folklore from two distinct continents. We will share the reason why, of
Oh,
course.
I've got a little bit of extra continents, but
Oh, okay.
there's not much.
That's valid. But we have not necessarily revealed to each other what we're going to tell one another. So
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be at least a treat on YouTube. If Wolfie wants to chime in too, that's going to be amazing
Oh, he
for
will.
the audio version of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope you're having a bomb ass time during this scary, amazing haunted season. Because we are.
Yeah. It is happy Hallow season. Happy, you could see I got my PSL makeup today. It's all orange toned.
Oh wait, I'm in purple, so I'm kind of haunted.
Yeah, as you established a couple episodes ago, we're inherently goth, so we thought we would go with goth this month. Except we actually, dare I reveal, hate the book that we chose so far. The
We
ultimate
do.
gothic anthology. We are having a hard time with it, but that's for another episode.
That's for next week.
So maybe we're just like pseudo goth. I'm okay with that.
Oh no, 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 we're goth. We just know what's good and what's not. That's really what it is. We're honest.
But in the wake of us reading Interview with the Vampire, we were like, where did this even come from? Why is this like the ultimate goth novel? Why do vampires exist in this way in our understanding, in our media, in our literature? So, not to give all the credit to the white man, we decided to
Ugh.
explore separately other continents and culture, like prehistoric cultures, or to see what they believed about bloodsuckers, so to speak. So, Claudia, let's just catch up the folks about what do you think of when you think of vampire in 2023?
Oftentimes I will think about Dracula, but because it is such a funny movie, I now think about Twilight. And I hate to admit it, but I think it's also because my Instagram, probably because I talk about it, and
Oh
you know
God, your
how,
algorithm.
right, you know how the algorithm listens. And I just keep getting so many parodies of it where it's like, Bella, where the hell you been, Loca? And I'm just seeing every time. But if we're thinking about like traits, I will often think about um, blood sucking of and uh super duper super speed. But
Hmm.
I also, again, because of Twilight, think about sparkly skin that shine like diamonds. I'm pretty sure that's what Rihanna was actually singing
Shine
about.
bright like an Edward.
Ew.
Um, I also think about the Catholic part. So the
Oh,
aversion to holy water, the
yes.
cross,
Oh, and
God,
oh, garlic, obviously.
garlic, the power of Christ compels you.
I also
Thanks for bringing up
Mhm.
garlic. We're actually going to come back to that. I'm sure
Oh,
you have something
same.
to.
Same with
Yeah.
mine. Don't worry, girl. Don't worry.
Painful or fatal responses to sunlight, unless you're
Hmm.
Edward Cullen and then you twinkle.
Oh,
But
oh. And then I also think about The Sims.
oh my God, what about The Sims?
So, they have Vlad and Bella Goth in there. I think Bella Goth is a vampire. And when they so there was this one video where Vlad and my one of the content creators that I love, she calls him Vladdy Daddy. Um
No.
so it's a different content creator. She goes, so I absolutely forgot that this man was a vampire, and I had them get married right before sunset, so he died.
Wait, I saw that TikTok.
The tears that came from my
Oh
oh my
man.
god. When I saw that, I was deceased.
I also think of having to be invited in and like no
Mm-hmm.
reflection. And I also, for some reason, always think of Victorian era or like 18th century garb.
Yeah.
Um, vampires we get in our mainstream are always they were frozen in time hundreds of years ago, and that's why I think like in Twilight, they try to adapt, but
I also think about the blah blah blah, like that kind of that it's like that they're speaking, and it's just like I want to suck your blood, blah,
oh,
all the
interesting you
time.
bring up the accent of
Stereotypes.
Slavic stereotypes.
Mm-mm-mm.
For that might be where our journey takes us first.
Oh my god. And then there was one more thing that I wanted to mention. What we do in the shadows.
Oh, I was also going to mention that
Excellent, excellent.
intermittently. Yeah. For the reason that the characters stuck in their era, very much so, all of the vampires are. Well, the blood-sucking vampires.
Yeah.
And the most important one, to me, most importantly, is our Ottoman era vampire in that show. Because
Oh, in the show.
it's going to be very rooted in like the history of the Middle East and the Slavic nations before they were the countries we know them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the other one who's British, Laszlo. So Nandor is the Persian one. Laszlo represents that like 17th, 18th century vampire who's like super like post Renaissance, like Age of Enlightenment, moving into industrialism, like
Cute, cute, cute.
loves
Love,
Da
love, love.
Vinci type of vampire.
Love, love, love.
But like I think we're all familiar with these like vampire tropes, right?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Apart from Twilight's little. So a lot of them did come from the book that we're reading, Anne Rice's novel, Interview with the Vampire.
Mm.
And then the movie starring somehow Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
And isn't not
Antonio
Dakota?
Banderas.
Oh, I didn't even know Antonio Banderas was in it. Now I want to see it more because
So
honestly, young Antonio was a hottie, hottie,
so
hottie, hottie.
in What We Do in the Shadows, one of the characters who's a familiar, he wants to be a vampire because of Antonio's character in it. He's like he's the only Latino representation of vampires in media. Dude, I'm telling you, you have to watch this show.
I know. But who played the little girl? Who plays my namesake in the
Claudia.
movie? Yeah.
Oh, it's Kirsten Dunst. It's Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst. I was like, it was a little blonde. That's why I went to Dakota Fanning. But Dakota Fanning, I don't think was thought of yet.
No,
So
I don't think she was yet born.
anyway, tell me about the origins.
Well, we're gonna start in Transylvania.
Ooh.
No surprise. That's where we're gonna start. So Transylvania today is located in Romania, which is in like the Balkan southeastern area of Central South Europe.
Yeah.
So it's bordering, interestingly, the Middle East kind of, and like it's part of those Slavic nations where we're gonna they've been under Ottoman they had been under Ottoman control a long time ago for a while, and also like the site of a lot of war and religious overhaul. So how did we get this concept of vampire? Well, it comes from this area, Bulgaria, 1,000 years ago. The legend
From
of
Victor
vampires.
Crumb. That's
Yes,
crazy.
from freaking Durmstrang it comes, which is, I mean, when I was thinking about this, I was like, what a lame way not to use vampire lore. Like, you give us Grindelwald, and he wasn't even Bulgarian; he was Scandinavian or something. But anyway, who am I?
My favorite part is comes from this area, Bulgaria.
No, it's time for a rhyme.
When in doubt, rhyme it out.
So, 1,000 years ago, we're going to go to Bulgaria, which is adjacent to Romania. It's in this. Remember, there were no countries back then. So
No borders.
It's dark. The night is full of terrors. There's war. There's pillage. And there's a lot of superstition.
Mm-hmm.
So these whispers
A
amongst
lot of Stevie Wonder.
the early Slavic tribes were about non-corporeal, so no physical body, beings, kind of like what we think of as
Ghosts and
poltergeists.
ghouls.
Exactly. Vampires wrought havoc. They were a spreader of diseases in a village, kind of like a pest. The vampire did not create other vampires at this time with its bite, and it didn't consume any blood. There was no like sparkly, sexy appeal. It was like a ghost-like being that operated just like New York City rats. It was just a pest, and it brought nastiness. So, however, alternatively, in some superstitions, Slavic concepts of early vampires were able to appear as butterflies. And this kind of echoes an old belief that butterflies represent like an escaping soul. So we get it. Like we're seeing kind of like some trends, right?
Wait, you know what else that reminds me of?
Uh-oh.
I think it was Game of Thrones. Wasn't it like the butterflies, at least in the books, that like wherever Grey Worm is from, like they had like a plague that was brought on or carried by like butterflies or something?
I vaguely remember this.
Because I remember the meme from
It was in the
Pokemon.
Summer Isles.
It was like a meme from Pokemon where
the
like
butterflies.
the butterfly, and then it was just like Grey Worm going back home and dying after living through all that trauma. Yeah.
Okay. I have the meme, but I'm not yet finding
Hold
the
on. I will
specific
find it.
meme.
Please
But
tell me more. I will find it and send.
So, in southern Russia, so that at this point, this is about like north of the Balkan area.
Yeah.
Southern Russia, people who talked to themselves were believed to be at risk of becoming these kind of ghoulish vampiric creatures. Now, that whole area, all those Slavic tribes, we'll say they were familiar with each other. Ultimately, they would all kind of become, after the Ottoman Empire, they become united under kind of like Russian explorers and then communism. But that's not for today.
No.
So, just after the Renaissance, so that's like this 14, 15, 1600s, the concept of vampire finally enters Western European superstition and lore. And that's because of kind of like this touchdown between cultures and exchange of ideas in merchant cities and religious belief exchanges, which we're going to talk about in a second. So war spreads beliefs, right? So the German-speaking peoples of the Holy Roman Empire, and we've talked about the end of the Roman Empire a couple of times already here. They kind of took control of. We totally are. They took control of the Slavic ethnic groups, and they kind of forced Christianity onto them. So now you're blending these old superstitions with now local legends, and soldiers would carry these ideas from city to city. So from Vienna to Berlin to Paris to London, and ultimately, where you're going to take us later, Puritans to the Americas and beyond. Right? So the word vampire first appeared in the English language only in 1732. Why vampire? Well, etymology aside, it kind of took on a new like image altogether. Instead of being a ghost, it now had a bodily form. Blood drinking made it seem more scientifically believable. Like, oh, it's a post-dead thing that has to sustain its life with blood. You know, we're scientific. This was like right after or during the Renaissance, so they were trying to make sense of the world around them. Yeah, they didn't have true science, but they were trying to make science. Like, you know, like blood, like leeches and bloodletting was science. And
so because you said the 1700s, I almost expected it to be ectoplasm, mostly because like there were a lot of like awakenings and such happening, or not awakenings, what is it, spiritualism that was occurring a lot, and so there were a lot of seances happening, and they would utilize ectoplasm to like display like a possession or something like that, when it was like some bullshit. But
This was all around that same period of time where human blood was believed to have medicinal qualities, and it was like consumed by people like outside of vampire groups or accusations. Today, actually, this is called medical cannibalism, which I thought was terrible.
Wait. The
So
act of drinking one's blood is called medical
cannibalism.
cannibalism.
Yep.
So there's a medical
Yes.
basis within it.
Yeah, the idea was it has healing qualities. So if you drink blood or you do bloodletting, like you are healing. They also believe the plague was spread through miasma, just like specks in the air. So like they didn't know jack squat.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair.
So blood was believed to be the vessel of the human soul in this period of time. So therefore, imbibing the blood means you're going to take in new life. They were prescribing blood for like epilepsy to blindness in the 1700s. So this is where we kind of get that like Victorian, really smart anatomy and physiology vampire idea from, because doctors were literally prescribing blood, and vampires, as we know them, drank blood to stay alive, and they like knew so much about restoring life and maintaining life for hundreds of years.
So when you say smart, do you mean like the intelligent vampire, or like the overall like idea?
The intelligent vampire. So like that steampunk vampire with a lab, okay. Or like who so Laszlo in What We Do in the Shadows is the stereotype. He's always doing stupid experiments, but they're rooted in BS science from like his century, but he's constantly trying to do things and makes all these mistakes.
One thing that we didn't mention in the traits is immortality. And so I feel like that also kind of ties in with the intelligence and like the level of smart they are.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounded 100%. Dumb. Their intelligence level. Because I need to finish my slice of pizza. I'm doing great. As I always am. But like I feel like that associates with that because, you know, what else are you going to do with your immortality besides like feast?
So as so many trends, it happens with so many trends, they go out of fashion and then they become evil or satanic. And that's kind of, I think, how this flipped into Power of Christ Compels You. Now, how do we get all of this and then like Dracula? Like, where did the idea of Dracula come from? So, this Eurocentric like vampire idea that we have is 100% based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but he historically has been referencing Vlad the Impaler, who in Romanian was called Vlad Cepes, which literally in ancient Romanian means Vlad the Impaler. And impaling was his favorite method of execution. So, what is an impaler and a vampire? What do they have in common? So, I'm just going to summarize Vlad. So, we're going back to Transylvania now. So, Bulgaria and Romania are close in proximity. So, we're going back to like this old Slavic lore. This is before Christianity hit. This is just princes taking over and knocking each other out and trying to, you know, conquer different lands in these Slavic regions. So Transylvania, 15th century. So Vlad III is considered to be one of the most important rulers in this area where we find modern-day Romania. His father, who was also Vlad, added this nickname Dracul to his name, and this was because he was a member of the Order of the Dragon. So Dracul and dragon, you could see the Latin root. Romanian is a Romance language, believe it or not. It's hard to tell sometimes, but that's a good example of Dracul, dragon.
Oh, Draco Malfoy. But also, that doesn't surprise me about Romanian because they have very similar sounds to Romance languages.
It's Latin and Slavic languages.
It's hot.
So Vlad Cepes, so our impaler, then carried over Dracula, son of the dragon, into his princehood titles, of which he had many because he was the third, and he ruled over a bunch of areas. So over his 3 intermittent princehoods, he was responsible for the murder of more than 80,000 people, and most of those were through the back. He participated in many, many wars with neighboring tribes. So he went off on the Ottomans, the Hungarians. He survived captivity multiple times to come back from the dead, so to speak, right? So he was this very, very popular wild character. But like, he wasn't a vampire. He was a real guy. And we have portraits of him, which I will put in the video version of this. So after his death, his conquests and his thousands and thousands of executions became the stuff of medieval legends, right? Because this was only the 15th century, this is the 1400s. So as the lore of Slavic superstition spread, lore of Vlad the Impaler spread, where every culture that was retelling his story through this game of historical telephone would just spectacularize his biography more and more and more until we get this woman to thank in the 19th century. Her name is Emily Gerard. She famously published this book of Transylvanian folklore. You know, like when white people go to places that have not yet like been fully westernized, so to speak, and they're like, "Oh, look at these jolly folk," and they want to like take journal notes on all the things they do,
You
right?
basically just said when white people eat, pray, love. That's basically what
Colonized.
you said. No, no,
Yeah,
no.
so
When they
she
eat, pray, love. She sounded like she was on an eat, pray, love journey to
So
find herself.
Emily Gerard went on this eat, pray, love journey to 19th century Transylvania, and she randomly wrote in her journal of Transylvanian folklore that this word Nosferatu meant vampire in Romanian. So she was considered a travel blogger back in her day. She like did all these, and they're all published. Like we can actually read these if you want. So this will make sense in one moment.
Okay.
So she went ahead and wrote Nosferatu in this travel journal. We actually don't know if that word was used in the same way she described it, but today Romanians will understand it. But the concept of Nosferatu, so a vampire, as we know, has been believed in firmly by Romanian peasants in particular, since the dawn of their like legends being told. They believed in these two sorts of vampires, the living and dead ones. This is now over time, the specific Nosferatu type. And they were the illegitimate offspring of two illegitimate persons. Um, every person killed by a Nosferatu will ensure that somebody in your family will then die the next day, can be killed by firing a pistol shot into a coffin or driving a stake through the corpse, as well as garlic being able to fill the mouth and terminate it. So these are some things she wrote about that she claimed were kind of part of Transylvanian lore for regarding this Nosferatu concept. So I thought that was interesting that she like kind of put her spin on this superstition. I think what we can definitely look at for like in Greek mythology, every myth is meant to explain a natural phenomenon that occurs, right? So the legend of a vampire could be used to explain lots of elements of death, especially during the Black Death and as it spread over Western Europe with this idea. And like these other Gothic superstitions, like just how do we explain reanimated corpse, people who look dead still being alive, or spreading of disease, right?
Right.
Similarly, so Romani people of this area as well have beliefs that vampires were invisible to most people, but could be seen by a twin brother and sister born on a Saturday who wore their clothes inside out.
See, this is why I don't trust twins. I love that. Go on.
So kind of messy, but I have one more legend from Croatia. So Croatia is also in this Slavic region, and this legend actually has become so like important to this town Kringa in Croatia that they have a whole like Disney World affair in honor of it to attract tourism.
I wonder
Tourists.
how close it is to King's Landing.
In Dubrovnik? That's a good question. I have no idea. Are you making a plan?
I mean.
So this legend takes place now centuries later when Christianity has overtaken kind of the region. So this is where we get like a legend of an actual person who became a vampire and the power of Christ was going to compel him. Got Yuri Grando. He was a real dude. We have like records. He died of some random illness, and the legend goes he would come at night to harass his town for 16 years. He assaulted his wife, like badly, to perform her duties, and he would like harass his neighbors, invade them in their rooms, and then it was said that his widow described a corpse looking as though it was smiling and gasping for breath as he would come to her. So Father Giorgio, of course, the priest, saves the day. He eventually comes face to face with Yuri's vampire corpse body. Hell holds the cross out and goes, "Behold Jesus Christ, you vampires, stop tormenting us." So the bravest of villagers chased and tried to kill this vampire by piercing his heart with a stick. So again, we have that like
the driving the stake.
Driving the stake. But it didn't work out. He got away.
I like that you called him a brave villager. I would have called him stupid, but
One night later, they expected him to come back, so now 9 people went to the graveyard over his grave, getting ready, carrying lamps. They had a cross. They had hawthorn sticks again, despite it didn't work yesterday. They
It might
dug
work
up the
today.
coffin. It might work today.
It
Maybe
might.
the moon's in the right place.
You never know.
Lord willing, right? This is the period. They dug up his coffin. They found a perfect corpse with a smile on its face. So they tried to do some exorcism prayers, and finally, one of the villagers got tight, and he was like, "Screw this!" Whipped out a saw and sawed off the head of the corpse. As soon as the skin began to tear, the vampire let out a blood-curdling scream, and blood flowed from the cut. Apparently, this decapitation is what led to his final death. And like I said, the people of this town, Kringa, love this legend, and they love to tell tourists. So you can go to a bar themed after Juri Grande in Croatia.
So low key, when you said Juri Grande before, I was like, Juriando Grande? That's
Juriando
crazy.
Grande.
It's like, that's crazy.
But, you know, the white man's never done eating, praying, and loving, right? Nor is the white woman, for that matter.
Never.
So where could they have taken all of this lore that is now kind of tainted with Catholicism?
Tainted lore. Whoa.
Oh,
Well, I have a
God,
mouthful of
tainted
pizza in my
lore.
mouth, bro. Oh, to
So
answer your question,
where
everywhere
did it
else.
go?
Everywhere else.
Take us on a ride?
I thought you were gonna mention other places.
That's, I mean, for as far as Europe goes, that's like,
Okay.
that's it. It comes from the Slavic cultures, and it came into the West, and then got Catholicized, and then that really brings us to you, because then what did the Catholics do with it?
They preached it. So, something to know about South America. Vampire lore apparently isn't that big. However, fun fact, vampire bats are actually native to the continent of South America. And I don't know if you had these when you were growing up, but I know I did. There were like these little like pamphlets that I would get in the mail, probably like through like the Highlights magazine or some shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were animals that had their own thing, and I had one about a vampire bat. So when I was reading through, making my notes and stuff, I was like, oh my God, I knew all of this. So anyway, since I already knew, I'm going to share. But essentially the vampire bat was discovered in 1810. That's when like the earliest kind of like entry of it was made. The legend of the vampire actually came before the bat. The bat's discovery, I should say. And so very common for these vampire bats to feed on mammals and livestock. Just letting you know, things are going to get a little graphic. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 main types of vampire bats. One is a white-winged vampire bat. The other one is a hairy-legged one. The white-winged one will climb alongside like an underside of a branch to feed on the toes of a bird. So like they're kind of like itty-bitty. And then the hairy-legged vampire bat will actually land on a bird kind of like a chicken and hide within its feathers to feed. So it's kind of like a flying tick, if you think about it like that. And they have these razor sharp teeth, and so they'll make like a small little cut, and then they'll start licking the wound. So they're not exactly sucking, it's just like a slurp slurp. Yeah, and so they have an anticoagulant that's in their saliva, which keeps the blood flowing, and they will often take about like a tablespoon of blood. And usually the animal that they're like leeching off of is none the wiser, has no idea, until like maybe the next morning when they're like, what the fuck is happening back there? That's crazy. So then,
like a pest.
Oh, very much like a pest. Also, to even go a little further back, Aztec mythology has these tales that describe, and again, I apologize for my pronunciation. I believe it is Chioate which is a skeletal face spirit of those who died during childbirth. And then they stole children and entered into sexual liaisons with the living, driving them mad. Right. Well, spicy.
Spicy. Interesting. Go on.
Indeed. Also lead into other South American vampires. So one of them is called the Acema, and the Acema is actually of Suriname. And the Acema was very much like two other types of lore, one from Haiti, which is Lugaru, and the other one is Secuyan from Trinidad. And so all three of these are derived from the vampire witch of West Africa. The Asema takes the form of an old man or woman who is living in a normal community during the daylight hours. But at night, we have a different secret existence happening. And so at night, they have this ability to transform into a vampire. And it did so by taking off its skin and becoming a ball of blue light. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. Blue light?
Blue light, a ball of blue light. And it flew in the air and entered houses in the village, and it sucked the blood of its victims. And if it liked the blood, it would continue taking it until the person died. Very similar to what is happening in Interview with the Vampire. That's all I'm gonna say. Also, just as with the Lugaru, which is from Haiti, garlic was the best protection against the Asema, my bad. And this is because herbs might be taken to like turn blood bitter. And when I read that instantly, I was like, yo, that's why we Latinos love garlic. Because we're protecting from the vampiros.
Yeah.
That's what I learned over the weekend, besides everything else. But that's what I learned.
Oh, man.
It's like, it's literally in my blood. It's just making my blood bitter. And so to further bring protection, they would also scatter rice or sesame seeds outside of the doors. Sorry, I heard noise. And I was like, what is that? That's crazy. And so the seeds would also be mixed with the nails of a ground owl. And honestly, this logic made me cry. It was so funny. It is said that the Asema had to pick up the seeds before entering, but because of the nails, it would continually drop them. And if it remained at this task until dawn, the sunlight would kill it.
No.
So it just sounds like that the Asema has like undiagnosed ADHD and is just hyper focusing on the task before getting to the real task.
Can't get through it because he's not thinking about tools. They can't get through it because I'm not thinking about tools.
Yo, I laughed so hard when I read that note. I was like, this needs to get highlighted. This is going to be told.
You better have some garlic for laughing at this demon.
You're right. Thankfully, my windows are closed, though. That bitch ain't coming in. So, if someone was suspected to be in Asema, they would be put under surveillance, and their identity could be determined by watching them take off their skin, right?
Cool.
And then, but wait, there's more. So then the skin was then treated with salt or pepper so that it would shrink, and the vampire could not get back into the skin. It was like, oh my God, it shrunk. I can't.
They threw it in the dryer.
They basically, that's some shit.
That's rude.
There is another South American vampire, which is called the Azaman. Yeah, Azaman. And it is a type of a living vampire that is often described as a woman. And so she would walk around like a normal human doing her thing. And she was so indistinguishable between other humans that there was really no telling that she would actually become a bat who hunts for blood. Blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
Indeed. And so this creature also had an impact on the European settlers, and there are a lot of similarities between the Azaman and the European vampires. Even the concept of a vampire transforming into a bat. So this actually shocked me because I'm now going into the chupacabra.
Yes.
And so I came across way too many resources, one would argue. And so it's said to have originated in Puerto Rico, but there is one that stated Mexico. And I think I actually had, so. This one gets spicy. Okay. So there were sightings that have been reported all over the world. Typically, the chupacabra feeds mostly on goats, and it's said to drink the blood of animals as well as the organs and leave the animal for dead, basically. But there are various descriptions of what the chupacabra's true form is, which usually implies that it's a shapeshifter. And so the scariest...
Another trait of vampires.
This is true, shapeshifting. The scariest version of the chupacabra comes from the mid-1970s. And I need you to picture this, okay? I need you to see a field, right? Full of dead animals. The blood is completely drained from them. But
Pale.
there is zero evidence of this. There is zero evidence of a slash wound, zero evidence of like a predator attack or anything.
Just porcelain carcasses?
No. Instead, what you see are just two small holes on the neck.
Oh.
That, I mean, whatever could it be? And so over the years, this story migrates from the island of Puerto Rico to American mainland. And this mysterious creature is glimpsed by eyewitnesses. And one describes it as a 5-foot-tall creature with glowing red eyes and bat-like wings, standing on its hind legs, and its spikes on its back, and it smelled of sulfur. Which a lot of times, at least talking about like ghostly things, typically the smell of sulfur is associated with death or a demon.
Yeah.
And so one of these eyewitnesses, it was in Texas, okay. This eyewitness describes this version of the chupacabra very dog-like. And so the DNA analysis revealed them to be canids. And canids include dogs, wolves, foxes, jackals, coyotes. And they can interbreed, which is how we usually get like wolf dogs or other hybrid types of animals.
Interesting where this is going.
Oh, wait, the so-called dead chupacabras, they often have mange, And so a lot of them have like hair that fall out and their skin begins to thicken and they
We
develop
need a rescue
folds.
center.
I know, for the chupacabras. The chupacabra adoption center. Uh,
Oh my God.
and so they also become very emaciated. And even if it is a domestic dog, depending on like how they look, like they can look like completely different animal. Especially when mange is involved and it's in like its later forms or
Sure.
later phases. And so this other eyewitness, her description in 1995 in Puerto Rico, okay? I don't feel like saying her name, but it's fine. Her and her mother, right? They see the monster in front of their house. And she describes this creature as not having an anus.
Oh,
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah, I don't know how they're seeing it this close. Like, is it just a gaping hole? Is there nothing there? Is it kind of like a Barbie Ken situation? Like, I don't know.
Mattel, Chupacabra.
And then it also has feathery spikes. Now, that's all interesting and whatever. This description also matches the description of something else. There was this movie that was released called, I think, Sill. Hold on, wait. Yeah, I think it was called Sill in 1995. And essentially, it's an alien movie, and the alien fits the description to a T of what this woman is describing.
Sick of people.
Right. So it's not, I mean, who knows? Maybe it does match. Shrug a doodle. But that was suspicious. And some witnesses will say that the chupacabra walks on two legs, others will say four. Some describe the animal to have like lizard-like skin, while others mention fur. Others have backbones, and sometimes they have sharp spines. And also with the two-legged chupacabra, supposedly they kind of like hop around like kangaroo, which honestly just makes it sound cute. I wouldn't mind a chupacabra, honestly.
So, me too. We don't have goats here that are in danger. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a mangy rabid or like sickly dog that attacks livestock.
Yeah, the only suspicious thing would be just the two holes that are there, really, because
Yeah.
I mean, I know obviously that dogs have like their canine teeth and like they're very fangy, but like I feel like if a dog bites down, you'd get both those punctures, but then also the little teeths in the middle.
Yeah.
You know,
Unless they fell out.
I mean, possible, but so many of them without their little teeths between their canines. Oh, that would be so silly looking. Because then they'll
We
look
need to
like
talk
this
to
with their
that dentist,
a dentist.
a dentist.
Son, be a dentist. You'll be a success. Okay, anyway. Um, and then you know what? I'm not gonna talk about the Portuguese one. Um, we will include that in the notes though. Um, but it does inspire the series The Witcher. So that's cool.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
cool.
Because I don't
Yeah.
wanna keep boring you with all my things.
You're anything
Um
but boring.
oh stop it.
It's
So
it's cool to see like the spreading of superstitions and how they manifest when they're combined with this existing superstitions in
mhm,
places. Hmm.
yeah. And I have three more that are worth mentioning. Two are from Mexico, and then my fave comes last. So for one of them, we are brought to Guadalajara in Mexico, and it tells the legend of the vampire's tree. So, in the 18th century, Mexico was under Spain's rule. And there was this man called Jorge, and he had moved from Europe, and he bought a house there, and he was hoping to settle in, make some friends, really vibe with the place, But something just wasn't right, and no one liked Jorge. And soon after Jorge arrived, the townsfolk started noticing that the animals were dying. They were found to have had their blood drawn. And one night, some of these townsfolk decided to investigate. Um, and much to their surprise, what do you think they found?
Holes?
Almost. They found Jorge. And what was Jorge doing, girl?
Ew.
Uh-huh. He was biting on the neck of an animal. Crazy man. Crazy girl. Crazy girl. And so naturally they were all shocked. So they started chasing Jorge. But he was fast as fuck, boy. And he got away.
Oh.
And they didn't know what to do. So they decided to do what really any logical townsfolk would do. And that was surround his house and drive a stake through his heart.
Yeah.
Right. And as he's being stabbed, Jorge cried out that he would return one day and get his revenge.
Ruh-roh.
And he was buried in El Panteón de Belén. But something strange happened over his tomb. A tree began to grow, and the townspeople began to think that the day the tree grew too much and tore would be the day that Jorge comes back for his revenge.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And a similar version to this, they ended up placing a rock over his tomb to prevent him from escaping. And the rock caused a break, and a branch started growing like through the cracks. And so the tree is still there in Guadalajara. And it's like 15 meters, and you could take a photo with this tree, but you'd have to pay 250 pesos to do so.
Yeah.
Because what's a good level of lore and having the physical representation of it without getting some sort of monetization,
Yeah. Just like paying to go into a cathedral.
It's, stop.
Me dripping my
Uh-uh.
salts everywhere.
And so my second Mexican vampiro comes from the Mexican Revolution, which we know so much about. And the legend takes place during this revolution, as I said. And, naturally, unfortunately, it happens with war where there are a lot of dead bodies in the street. So, as we know, the Mexican Revolution had many, many things occur within it that are very typical of war. And so it got a little bit graphic. But what was not normal was seeing once again bodies with 2 holes in their necks and their blood gone. And 2 generals, right? They asked their troops to investigate the nearby houses for anything sus. And of course, one troop of soldiers, they found a house with an insane amount of jars filled with blood. Delicious.
Yeah.
And so they were then tasked, because they had to get rewarded in some way, They were tasked with stalking the house. And just when they thought that no one was coming, they heard very loud flapping. And they watched this figure with wings go from a figure with wings to a man and walked into the house. And so the troops were ordered then to open fire. And, they followed. And so the man fell, sprawled right in front of his door. And the soldiers approached to ascertain what was going on with their target. And the target said, "There's more of us, and they will come for all of you." And so the soldiers were frozen in fear. But the general walked right up to the man, pointed his rifle at the man's heart, and fired. And though they had killed this man, there were still bodies with holes in their necks coming up. And to this day, it's said that vampires remain in Mexico.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. And now I come to my favorite. And I know that I said that I went in kind of in order of occurrence. I lied, apparently, because I forgot in what order I went with this. So that's fun. Love you. Sorry.
You went in order of riveting.
That's true. So I come to the pistaco, which is I think, Quechuan term for a Peruvian vampire. But this Peruvian vampire is very different. So the pistaco.
Is this predating colonizers?
Oh no, the conquistadors are involved.
Oh yes.
This is why this is my favorite. So. The pistaco is a man-like monster from the Andes who is often described as a white man who kills indigenous people for nefarious cannibalistic purposes. Mm-hmm. And you may think, oh my God, they're totally draining their blood. No, they're not. They're draining the fat from the body. Oh, I promise that there's a reason why. Don't you worry. So they're stealing their fat and cutting them up, and this is one version of it. They're making chicharrones. Essentially, the fried pork rinds. Yep. So that's one. And the second. So I think we can all agree, for the most part, that at some point within our history lessons, we've heard that those that had excess fat were a sign of wealth, health, strength, beauty. And illnesses were often associated with the loss of body fat, or like skeletal thinness, which was not really viewed as beautiful. So keep that in mind. Keep that in the back burner while I tell you about this. So unfortunately, I really hate to mention this, but this is kind of metal. The conquistadors would treat their wounds with fat of their enemies. So it is said that the Spaniards would also kill indigenous people, and they would take their corpses, boil them to obtain the fat so that they could grease their weapons, which would rust very quickly in the Amazon forest. And so,
bro, just go home.
Bruh. So what
Just
makes
go
it,
get, you don't
I
belong
know,
there.
I know, and I'm not, okay, it's not funny, but it's also Spanish missionaries that became known as pistaco.
Bye.
I know. And so it is believed that they were killing indigenous people for their fat. And this fat would not only go for greasing their weapons, it would also, why did this get funky? There we go. It was also believed that they would be making soap and candles out of this fat. So again, I hate to admit it, but that's real metal. I know. Blech. So then, the earliest known reference of the Pistaco legend is from 17 I flipped those numbers. 1574. According to a priest named Cristobal de Molina,
Okay, Cristobal.
indigenous people of this area, they were avoiding the Spaniards and refused to enter their homes in the belief that they would be killed specifically again for their fat. And so this legend became connected to the Bethlehemite friars who opened a hospital in the year 1700. These friars would travel, beg for alms, um, and typically, in addition to the pistaco being a conquistador, it could also be a friar, also described as white. Yeah, agreed, agreed. I know. That's going to be great for you to edit later. That sound. That was beautiful.
Remember talking about explaining phenomena going on in your community?
Hmm. There we
I
go.
hate it.
I know. And then in 1621, Pablo Jose de Arriaga wrote that according to the legend, the I couldn't find a pronunciation for this. I kept thinking that I was trying to spell caucus, and I was like, I know how to spell caucus, and I know what a caucus is. Calm down. It's I think gauchos.
Oh.
The gauchos was a blood-sucking creature who preyed on children. Cacuch, what did I just say? Gauchos,
Gaucho
gauch.
pants.
Not, I mean, yes, but not. Gau, gauchos would sneak into people's homes and put them to sleep using a powder made of human bones. They would scratch the victim with their fingernail and drink their blood from that wound. And the victims
That's
would
a
die.
long fingernail.
I know. The victims would also die within a few days later.
All right.
And it was believed that this legend of the Cauchos merged with the legend of the Pistacos, creating this fat draining vampire. Um, I'm crying. So the set of notes that I got, um, and all my sources are linked in my notes. So I, like I said, I have like 6 to 7 maybe resources. So my bad. Um,
We get a PhD.
it says in historical context, the indigenous people of the Andes were not wrong. Bloodthirsty, fat stealing vampires is the perfect description for the Spaniards at the time. There were many opinions, and it's not wrong. That's why my background's just very complex.
Indeed.
And so essentially the inhumane treatment of the natives and the horrors of the Spanish conquest created this legend.
He looked like a creep coming up in the mirror. That was
He
so
did.
scary.
Um,
In that moment.
oh, and also worth mentioning, it is a historical fact that human fat was used for medicinal and practical purposes.
Blood.
And, as we know, indigenous people were viewed as savages and dehumanized by so many European nations at that time that were discovering them. And so, again, it's worth mentioning and worth putting it out there. And then I come to my last thing, the cinematic vampire. So I learned this today, well, this weekend, that the first South American vampire movie was called El Vampiro Negro, which came out in 1953.
No.
Yes. And it says here that primarily in Argentina and Brazil, vampires would make like periodical appearances in movies. But this one, El Vampiro Negro, it was based on the true case of now my German's not perfect. How would you pronounce the U with the two dots on it?
You.
Okay. So it was based upon the true case of Peter Kürten, who is known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf.
Oh no, not Dusseldorf.
Dusseldorf? Dusseldorf?
No, you're right. Dusseldorf.
Ooh, or the Dusseldorf Monster. And so Peter was very much a real human in true crime history. I actually listened to my usual spooky true crime podcast. They mentioned his story, and he committed a series of murders and essays between February and November of 1929 in the city of Dusseldorf. And yeah, so I thought that was interesting, that's what they chose to be the inspiration.
That is European. The origins of the word.
And also, while I was researching, a lot of times when they would mention vampires, they would also mention werewolves. So I thought that was also interesting. Because that made me think of what they do in the shadows. Specifically the what are we? Werewolves, not swearwolves.
Yeah.
As well as Twilight. So
yeah, they're always pitted against each other as these night shapeshifters who threaten humanity. There's so much more. Hold on. Going back to just the origins of that word, kind of like goth, it's a little unclear. Weird that they're both in the same vein.
Is he barking at himself at the mirror?
So our neighbor is barking. Our neighbor is barking, but that's what's going on. He sits and stares in the mirror because he has a reflection all the time.
Because he's a handsome young lad.
He is.
But like I literally just saw him staring at himself.
So
That was a little tail.
Wolfie was trying to explain the etymology is a little funky. And I mentioned before, the word vampire doesn't appear in English till the 1732 in this like pamphlet about a story of some blood-sucking person. But it seems that it comes from French vampire or German vampire or Hungarian vampire or Old Church Slavonic.
Let me guess.
I don't know.
Vampire?
Vapir, and then Ukrainian and Old Ottoman uper, which today in Turkish means witch. So again, there's like we have a supernatural quality to them.
I mean,
yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. But speaking of Ottoman, I did want to kick us back in history a little bit further real quick, because you can see how like the European and South American kind of Catholic influenced versions of the Slavic myth are these bloodsuckers who we're familiar with. But many cultures, and I'm sure a lot are lost to history at this point, did have concepts of life sucking, kind of like your fat sucking beings,
Hot.
life sucking to
Gross.
sustain life type of creatures. And they would do it, at night or whatever. So I kind of lumped these together that I'm gonna run through pretty quickly.
Go off.
Were you gonna say something? I'm sorry, I just changed my screen.
It's okay. It also reminded me of whatchamacallit, of Mexican Gothic, low-key.
Oh, word.
Because of like all the ritualistic things within it, especially when I forgot the family.
The Doyle.
Thank you, the Doyles. I was like, it's something real English, and it's not coming to me.
Real Irish though.
You're right, but yeah, like what the Doyles went through to become essentially immortal.
Fact be, yeah, to sustain life, you're intaking other forms of life.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little different. This was before the age of like the scientific revolution and the age of reason and the Enlightenment, and then the spread of, Christianity. Period. Because we're going back to 9,000 years ago, Jordan. So we're in the Middle East in like the Levant period. So like the birthplace of kind of religions and stuff as we know it. So the oldest indication that living people feared an unholy resurrection might be found at this site. Some archaeologists suggest that post-mortem mutilation was done to prevent bodies from rising after they died. So in this particular recent this dig was conducted, like I think the city was founded in 1999 or something by this Danish university. And they found that bodies were stored in pieces, like the bones were separated in houses. They were like interred in cabinets in houses.
Okay.
9,000 years ago. So like, why would you do that? And they're postulating that it was to keep them dead. So that idea, 9,000 years ago, stay dead, bitch. Like, what?
I love that is such a contrasting idea to like, I forget what decade it is or what era, but when they were burying people and it was possible to be buried alive, and they would have like the bell for you to ring in the event that you were actually alive. Like, it's just a counter, like just a polar opposite of that I find interesting, so to speak.
So no full skeletons, and other evidence of like magical practices, basically. So again, we're in the superstition, witchcraft, wizardry, Hogwarts realm of. So since we're in this part of the world, Mesopotamians, they had them. The Persians, of course, were one of the first civilizations thought to have tales of monsters. Creatures attempting to drink blood from men are depicted on excavated pottery shards from pre-Ottoman ancient Mesopotamia. The Babylonians had tales of Lilitu, who is kind of we credit her with the giving rise to Lilith in the Hebrew Bible.
And Lilith in The Sims.
I'm dead. And so is she. She's a demon. So Lilith is a demon, also often depicted as subsisting on the blood of babies. That's going to be a huge theme in this part of the world, and also in some of the Pacific Islands. When I was researching, there's a lot of female people or demons who suck the blood of babies.
Oh,
that's very interesting.
Pause.
Lilith?
You know who Lilith is in the Bible?
The first wife of Adam.
Yeah. Blah 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 blah.
She was created as Adam was created. She wasn't torn from him. She was a mistake.
I couldn't wait to get to this one.
I told you, Old Testament tea.
We have to read the Old Testament. I'm sorry. Not a great comic book.
It's so good.
So I we can go into Lilith, but there's more. So
all right, Billy Mays.
A lot of this like ancient lost stuff reminded me kind of the conversation we had in Mermaid about
Yes.
female witches of the sea. So I just wanted to make that connection. Then there's a Babylonian goddess, Lamashtu, and Galu. They are vampiric. They were terrifying, blood-sucking creatures who would prey on newborns and mothers. They would snatch newborns from mothers and then eat the flesh. So there's also a Hebrew word, aluka, sorry for butchering it, which translates to leech, and it also is synonymous with vampires. I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
And I guess there are some stories about these shape changers into wolves.
Ow!
Yeah.
Cue Wolfie's bark right here.
I know. You're never on time, bro. So this particular creature can fly by releasing its long, luxurious hair, and then would die if it was prevented on feeding on blood for a long enough time.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it had like it wasn't like an everyday feeder. It was just like almost like a bear. Oh my god, the Rapunzel of vampires.
The Rapunzel of vampires.
Oh my god, so cute.
We'll post this. I think this is interesting. I found this blog of the Vampire Project. And there's this whole article. Sorry, it's an excerpt from the journals of this. I think he was a doctor, this French medicine man, Joseph Piton de Tunfol. He was a botanist and he was a botanist, excuse me, and he was notable to make the first concept of genus for plants. But either which way, he went on a journey, and he happened to witness an exorcism of a vampire. Correct. So he loved in the Ottoman Empire. So that I'll link that blog post.
That's fire.
From blogs from yesteryear. And the last one I wanted to bring up was the succubus. So that's a seductive night demon, very similar to a vampire because it's a female version of an incubus. So it's known as invading a man's bedroom at night.
Wait.
Steals his sperm. So fat, sperm, and blood.
I was literally gonna look up incubus.
Or
it's like, I don't necessarily know what incubus means. And then when I looked it up,
whatever tomorrow brings,
I'll be there.
Yep.
Oh my god. So, okay. Thank you. Go on.
In this account of the succubus, I liked this line. The effect of such an attack could vary from extreme pleasure to absolute terror, but in either case, it left the victim exhausted. The whole point of this intercourse was to copulate without fighting. That was giving me insight into this culture that came up with succubus more than I care to even think about again.
I mean, it also brings up the whole idea of vampires being super seductive and ooh.
Yeah. Yep. Précisément. So, you looped in a lot of West African. We're now moving down into the cradle of civilization.
Excellent.
Lore, as it translated, it got kind of pulled into the Caribbean. But essentially, there were a lot of iron-toothed demons or things that lived in trees. So they were coming down from the sky.
Ooh.
That would hunt children. So again, kids were affected. Some of them controlled the weather, and some of them would, in Madagascar, they were called the Ramanga. It was an outlaw or a living vampire that would drink the blood and eat the nail clippings of nobles. Ickis.
But why the nail
also,
clippings?
What were you using to clip nails at that point?
Probably its teeth.
Other nails?
Oh,
teeth. She said you bite.
Nail-biting demon. A nail-biting demon. Oh my god! Poor thing. Poor thing.
And finally, this one I thought was not like others, but still kind of in this demonic, bloodthirsty. So in Sri Lanka, we're going now to Asia.
Ooh.
The belief of Ririyaka, the blood demon. According to mythology, he, upon being born, he would tear his mother's breast off and emerge into the human world as a demon. And then there's bloodshed and blood consumption and demonizing.
It's giving Antichrist.
It is. Again, before there was Christ, there was just demon. And okay. This is what I was dying. Okay, so remember I was saying there's obviously we've just listed off a whole bunch that are related to children being harmed or their blood being sucked. So in the Philippines, there are two main creatures. So one of them is the Mandurogo. She takes the form of an attractive girl by day and then has wings and a long hollow thread-like tongue that acts like a proboscis at night to suck fetuses out of pregnant women. They prefer to eat on entrails, heart and the liver, and the phlegm of sick people. So again, I don't know what if these are traditional prior to like conquistador legends, and if they are very it kind of tells me a lot about like babies dying, like stillborns and all that, trying to explain these phenomena. But otherwise, it's giving like women hate, plague. I like fruit punch, sure. Okay, and the other one is the Manananggal. I'm so sorry. And it is an older, beautiful woman who can sever her upper torso to fly into the night with huge bat-like wings and then prey on pregnant women again. And she uses her tongue to suck up the blood from a sleeping victim.
So part of me also wonders because, okay, coming back to, like the ghosts and poltergeists and stuff like that, usually the three people who are most sensitive to these kinds of things, it's thought to be animals, kids and babies, and women. And or specifically pregnant women.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think it's something with like the senses, like I don't know. For all I know, it's like chakra related. I don't fucking know. But for some reason, these three are the ones that usually can see more supernatural entities, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I find it so strange that they're always associating it with a baby or a woman. I don't know. It's weird, but I like it.
She's interesting. Okay, and I think like just the final thought is all of this. We got the blood sucking, the fat stealing, the baby stealing, the Lilith, and Vlad the Impaler, and somehow all of these come to. And then you had the myth. We have a couple with these creatures having wings and the bat. So how did the vampire bat why bat? And I just to sum up bats. In I guess like cultural anthropology, bats are considered something called liminal beings. So they're like a creature that cultures like don't really understand. They walk according to especially older cultures before the age of reason, before studying animals and kind of like their behaviors. They were like walking between two planes. Like they hunt at night. They're nocturnal. They have their own systems. They make no sense. And we know them to be mammals, and they're the only flying mammals, which is also putting them in their own. They're so freaking cute.
They're blind predators.
Huh, they're what?
They're blind predators.
They're blind predators. They were just weird, furry bitches who took flight, and old cultures were like, "What is that? That's so creepy." And vampire bats in South America are pestilence. They are a pestilence. So, other mythical liminal beings you could think of are centaurs, sphinxes, all these hybrids. They don't fit into one singular category of existence according to these. So neither do vampires. So it makes a lot of sense to link the two together. That's one theory.
But I don't know. I think it's also associated with the fact that because they're primarily nocturnal hunters, whenever you see like a moving shadow, you're like, "Oh my god, what was that?" And so, it kind of adds to that like scare factor, I guess, too.
Definitely.
that added like lore and misunderstood factor to it. And also, like, imagine you have just found a bat and all you see are the wings and like how like see-through, right? Because they're usually like pretty see-through their wingspan, and like you see like their veins and like their bones, and they're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who was gonna like dissect a dead bat and like had a familiar knowledge to humans would see a lot of similar bones, just different sizes, because we are all mammals, which is also freaky.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't. Oh, excuse me. No.
but all that to say, this book was like a first gothic vampire novel. It's Louis telling his story of how he became a vampire and his vampire quest, and a lot of tropes that we are familiar with today are like kind of like cemented in there. And also she combats some, like the whole afraid of sunlight or whatever. I don't remember. I already blocked it.
Well,
but
death via sunlight.
death via sunlight, and some other things. Within the story, Louis says like they are also stereotypes. So gives
I'm
more like a lore
really trying to power through this damn book.
to the misunderstood vampire. I'm 100% going to watch the movie. Sorry. To help get through the plot.
Like, okay. This could stay in or not. I really don't care. But based off of like reading it, I feel like this would work. I think part of what's turning me off is like or what turned me off to like actually reading the book versus listening to the audio is the long part 1 and not having like clear divisions in it. So it just feels like I've been in chapter 1 for so long, and I feel like I'm gaining nothing from being still in chapter 1.
Yeah, and I normally like first person perspective, but not here. There's like the world building is there, but it's like I don't know. My belief has not been suspended. Disbelief has not been suspended.
Yeah, like it's very
I'm just
hard.
bored.
Yeah, like I could see this being better in like almost like little vignettes of like that it's just like, okay, we're here for like day 2 of the interview, you know? And like having it released as like little vignettes or like short stories even in like a magazine or like in a newspaper or something.
Oh my god, like Evelyn Hugo was literally half a book of interviews.
Yeah,
and
but
somehow that story
it was way more captivating. Anyway,
that's for next time.
yeah, sorry. But now you know we hate it.
It happens.
It does. But if you want to schedule a viewing party, let me know.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let me
If
know.
anyone wants to watch it while we watch it, we can do a live chat or something.
Oh my god, that'd be cute.
Yeah, we don't have a Discord. I'm crying. We're not having a Discord.
No, that's too much. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you for listening to the vampire lore for this episode. Also, Keith got a really good laugh when I said prepisode, and he was like, I said I can't take credit for that. That was all Christina.
Preparation H, yep.
Woo! And as always, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Insta, TikTok. I need to get back on that because I've been terrible. It's gonna be fine. And we post our episodes twice in a month. Yeah, okay. I'll say it like that. Twice in a month. And it's always posting on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and somewhere else that maybe you haven't told us of yet, and I hope that you tell us. Because that would be super helpful. Oh?
Castbox, Google Podcasts,
Ooh.
Overcast, and Radio Public.
Look at
We do.
us expanding.
Expanding.
But as always, thank you so much. And we'll catch you on all the socials and next week. Or
Thanks for tuning in. And do let us know if you're enjoying this read with us.
because we're struggling.
Happy October!
Woo!
Bye!
Bye.